listening to the radio. There was somebody who I think is the daughter of somebody who did a lot with the Hubble telescope. She's reading poetry, and her poetry starts with, "Is God being or energy? Is God the wind or what commands it?" And this is what this is poetry, and I'm not doing it justice with the way I'm reading it because I don't read it with this dramatic flair. But yes, it's a big question, right? It's a big question, but isn't it obvious? Isn't it obvious that nothing humans was made by energy? Sure, energy's involved, but is there not a being behind the deliverance of that energy? Doesn't an electrical power plant require a lot of beings who work to make things happen? To make that energy? Well, the sun is an energy source, and it's made to work the way it does. That's guaranteed, 100%. 100%. There's no question about it. And that's not done by humans, and that's not done by space aliens. They have no control over the sun. Zero. So all the people that are, claiming to be spiritual are spiritual. But the kingdom of God isn't spiritual. Except in the context that they're always trying to improve themselves, and that they have peaceful behavior, and they're gentle people, and caring, and enjoy helping others, and enjoy being active and progressing and having growth in their behavior, and their those characteristics are, yes, those are characteristics of the beings, plural, of the kingdom of God. Now, notice in the Bible where it talks about, whenever you see the word God in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, they're saying that it's a general term, theos, for supreme deities. It's plural. Supreme beings is plural. And Jesus said that in the kingdom of God, even the least member in the kingdom of God is greater than the greatest member of the human kingdom, which he was comparing at the time to John the Baptist being the greatest member of the human kingdom. So that means that even the least is a supreme being. Okay, they may not look like a supreme being. They may not be able to control the sun, because that's all a team effort. Don't forget, we are a speck of time. We are a grain of sand in time. Our entire existence, all our history, and all the history in the past is all a speck in time. This is Sawyer, by the way. So we can talk about how the 13, a friend of mine says that her friend has one of the 13 crystal skulls, one of the original 13 crystal skulls, and that these skulls are what contain the Akashic record. Well, isn't that a little ridiculous? First of all, the skulls are tools. So someone made them. Now, could they be computers? Sure, they could be computer systems, and they hold a bunch of energy, and that energy could be configured like as a crystal memory system. So they could actually have a way of deciphering that. It could be structured the same way as we have computers that are structured on silicone. Now, but is that the same thing as what we call the akashic record? Well, I say it's potentially part of it. You see, with all things, there's usually a little bit of truth to them. So therefore, you can say things about them. People can write books about them. They can say the crystal skulls are the result, are containing the akashic record. But does that mean that if you took one of those crystal skulls and you demolished it with a stronger, harder crystal or a diamond crystal, that basically a 13th of the akashic record would be gone, or would be split into pieces that would not be able to be accessed in the same way? Well, I think that's a little ridiculous to think, because I'll tell you what I believe the akashic record is. The akashic record is real, I believe. And every time a being dies, and while they're living, they are adding to the akashic record. Because when they die, the frequency composition of their mind that occupies the brain, that the brain is wrapped around, so to speak, because everything requires energy to exist and to function. Everything has polarity. Now, polarity is actually the bigger force. And so the physical parts of it, components of it, are wrapped around that energy. Okay? Like suspended within. Like the hardware is wrapped around the software. The software is riding on the hardware. Just like so every time somebody dies, basically their program, which is a series of programs, it's an object though, it's one little object, tiny little speck of light object, is added to the akashic record. Now, that record is actually, that one little speck that's added is actually accessible, because each of those discarnate beings seek to influence human beings that are not discarnate. They're not disattached from their physical body, because they're not separate entities. When we're born in a physical body, the spirit is being developed, although it's carrying on from what it had accumulated in the past. So there is a form of reincarnation of spirit in that way. The leaf has that energy, so that energy doesn't go away, so it's still there as a root system. So anyway, so if a scientist dies, just to give you an example, then all the data they had in their brain and everything they experienced is basically a little module that's more or less floating around and seeking to express itself by mingling with other scientists, because that's what it likes to do the most. And therefore, if the other scientists have a certain amount of capacity to tap into the same data stream, because they deal with the same terms, they do the same things, they have the same interests, then basically that's accessing that data. So if you're somebody that can go into a mental state and call upon spirits that you know or don't know by whatever methods you use, techniques, Tiendo called them tricks. You're basically potentially tapping into that data. If you want to see your grandmother, then when you call your grandmother's name, when you're in a meditation or being led by somebody that is more sensitively developed to perceive spirits, because we all have that sensitivity to a degree, but it's so subtle for most of us that we don't identify what's going on. So basically then we potentially tap into what spirit is, what those spirits that we draw to us have to say and think and feel, and the way they act, and therefore can influence us. And we can feel if we loved that individual when they were living, then, and that's what we remembered most about them, like a grandmother, then when we feel that entity come around us because we've called that entity somehow, then what we're going to feel is love. Now, is it going to be the ultimate love? Well, it's all our interpretation. It's strictly our interpretation of it. So if it feels like the ultimate love to us, then we're feeling a sense of bliss. Okay? Now, so that makes us feel good, I guess, for the moment, and it's interesting to talk about, interesting to think about, and we want to do it again. So it ends up potentially becoming a form of addiction.